So I never thought I would make another video like this, but, you know, I need to talk about the things that bother me, and a lot of these topics are just too long to make TikToks about. Like, if I can go on about this for more than 10 minutes, I'm not going to make people watch 10 parts of a TikTok just to get my point across. And I'm not very concise either when it comes to writing, so here we are. What's bothering me today is Julia Hartley-Brewer. There we go. Julia Hartley-Brewer. She is a host on a radio show, and she had interrupted her guest because they were talking about the slight increase in, you know, transgender prisoners in the British prison system. And the reason she interrupted him is because he was talking about cis women and trans women. Why is this an issue? Well, I'll show you the clip.
I like the fact that this has been framed in, everyone is saying that they have respect for the trans community. So that, I think, is good and a great step forward in the community.
It's terrible that it has to keep being said, though, isn't it?
It is, but the problem is, if we then take the case of one person and have a rule that then impacts everyone in the trans community, that is also not fair. And it's not
just one person. I've got it's very simple for me. If you are, bearing in mind the time, children might still be on the way to school in the car. If you are physically intact as a man, biologically intact, you're not in a women's prison. End of. Nothing to discuss.
But also, if you are a woman in a woman's prison, you should be safe from being attacked by a cis or a trans woman. So actually, everyone should be safe in prison.
Can I just say, you're not allowed to come on my show and say a cis or a trans woman. A woman.
It just is
or
the
a
Latin
trans
opposite
woman.
of trans.
No. I'm not a cis woman. Vanessa is not a cis woman. We are women. We are biologically women. I am not going to have that BBC claptrap on my show.
I'm just using a bit just to differentiate.
I'm not going to have it. I'm a woman. I'm not a cis woman. I'm a woman. I was born a woman. 50% of this population are women. We're not cis women. We don't have to adjust what we're called for a tiny minority of activists who don't even represent trans people.
So if I said non-trans woman, would that be?
That would be equally. If you say that, I'm going to ask you to leave my studio. I'm absolutely serious. I'm not having it. I'm not having our language in this country traduced in this way. I'm a woman, you are a man. I'm quite happy for someone to be a trans woman or a trans man, but you don't take away what I am because you choose to change your gender.
No, but you get that. I was only using it in that sentence to point out the two groups.
No,
the
two groups
I refer to you as a woman.
And trans woman.
Can I just take this debate on side?
So what does this term mean? Cisgender. Well, you know, we have transgender people, and cis is the Latin opposite of trans. So we have cisgender people, the people who are not trans. What this means is that when you are assigned a gender at birth, when you pop out of the womb, or when you get C-sectioned out, if that's what happened, you're assigned a gender at birth. Usually matching your genitals. That's what we call it because, you know, it doesn't always match. But for cis people, it does match. So you're born a woman, identify as a woman, you're a cis woman. If you're born a man, identify as a man your entire life, you're a cis man. There's nothing wrong with that. We're just creating this word to differentiate between trans people. So we have someone who was born a woman at birth, they decide to transition to a man, they identify as a man, they're trans man. Same thing with trans women. They are born male at birth, they identify as a woman, they transition into a woman, they are a trans woman. It seems pretty simple when I explain it like that. I hope I'm not mansplaining. I kind of am. I just want to be very clear so we're all on the same page. This term, cissexual as it was originally, was coined by a German sexologist in 1998. It was published in academic journals throughout the rest of the 1990s, and then it became popularized, at least the word cisgender became popularized by Julia Serrano in 2007 with her book Whipping Girl. All of this it's just an adjective to describe someone who is not trans. Why do we need that kind of thing? It's like differentiating. This woman has brown hair, she's a brunette woman. This woman has blonde hair, she's a blonde woman. It's that kind of thing. It's actually an adjective. Both trans women and cis women are women. But sometimes when we have discussions like this, we need to be able to differentiate so that we know what we're talking about. So why does why does Julia Hartley-Brewer, why does she take offense to this? Why does she not want this BBC claptrap on her show, if that's what you want to call it? Well, it seems like obviously the issue here is not the word trans woman, it's the word cis woman. And she would rather use the terms women and trans women. So this is something that a lot of conservatives, a lot of gender critical feminists, or as we have known them, that's kind of the rebranded name, we know them as TERFs, which is trans exclusionary radical feminists. This is something that they would do. And it's a way to further alienate trans people in discussions. The word woman itself is inherently inclusive of trans people because you don't know whether you're describing a trans woman, you don't know whether you're describing a cis woman, a blonde, brunette, skinny, fat, whatever. When you say woman, you're talking about someone who identifies as a woman. Making this conversation about women and trans women excludes trans women from the word women. And that's where the issue is. So using it in this kind of conversation is confusing at best and transphobic at worst, since she only wants the word woman to be used for cis women. And so it might feel like that this language, you focusing on trying to use this language is a little bit picky, and maybe it is. Maybe it's important. I would like to say, don't let this actually distract you from the real issues that trans people are facing. Trans people are getting murdered. In America, at least, we don't have a lot of the same protections that cisgender people do, especially with, the last few days of Trump trying to take as many protections away from LGBTQ people as possible. And a lot of it is a state-by-state case. So I know in Michigan, where I currently am right now, in terms of work discrimination, there is no protections for trans people. In terms of trying to change your name, usually it's okay, like I've changed my name, but in terms of changing your birth certificate, you have to get surgery first, where some states might have you go on like hormone therapy and then allow you to change your birth certificate. That's the gender on your birth certificate, by the way. Some states, just like California, I think, just lets you do it, as maybe you need to have some notes or something, I'm not sure, but I know that you don't have to have surgery. And so we need to make sure that we're not letting language be the forefront, which it often is, because it's easy to talk about, it's easy to explain, and it does lead to it does lead to more acceptance of trans people and trans people in society. But we have to make sure that we're not focusing on language and what we call each other. We need to make sure we focus on expanding the protections and the medical care and accessibility for trans people, because those are the protections that we need in our everyday lives. And language, I feel like when it comes to language, people will always be behind. People will always be on top of it. But when it comes to healthcare and being able to transition, that's the important stuff. By the way, I'm just going to say this. We're not trying to change the way you identify. What Julia said was definitely out of ignorance. Out of her not knowing the roots of this language, the reason we use it, the way that we use it. We're not trying to actually even change. We're trying to change the way that everyone talks, but we're not going to force you to do it. You do still have your freedom of speech. But if you do think that cisgender, if you do feel like that word is oppressive because it differentiates you from a woman, which it does not, then why do we label trans women differently? Why are we trying to separate this label of trans women from women? Think about that. Because trans women have been dealing with that for years. Trans men have been dealing with that for years. And if you still think that this is oppression after everything that I have just listed, that the protections, the accessibility to healthcare that trans people don't have, the way that they can be denied services in a way that other people cannot, and you still think that you saying a different word or a different category is oppressive, it's time to check your privilege. And I know that saying is so overused and corny, but how privileged is it to have all of these people going through something else, going through things that are much worse, and you having access to all of that, but you don't want to say a word. And you don't have to. If you don't want to be inclusive, you don't have to say anything. But I would just like you to think about the people that you are excluding from the conversation or from your world.